Isn't there something that happens with Ibogaine where it like literally rewires?
Yes. Now, that's true with other psychedelics as well. It's called neuroplasticity. And so, what that means is that there is this ability for our neurons to have new synaptic connections. And that's what we mean is neuroplasticity. Our brain is constantly being rewired. Every time we do anything, we have memories, and the memories are encoded. And sometimes they get encoded in harmful ways, like with trauma, with PTSD. The memories are so painful that they never really get fully processed. They never really get put into long-term storage. There's a lot of changes in your brain when you have PTSD. But that this idea that you can then rewire your brain once you experience them. And so there's researchers at Gould Dolan is at Johns Hopkins. She's done studies in mice with MDMA and showed that it releases oxytocin, which is the hormone that we have for love and connection, nursing mothers, but it also promotes this new neural growth. So Ibogaine does that. LSD does that. Psilocybin does that. And what Gould has found, which is really interesting, is that the longer you're in the psychedelic state, the longer afterwards this period of neuroplasticity lasts, where you can do more integration work, where you have this enhanced ability to reroute patterns in your brain. And so Ibogaine opens up this period of neuroplasticity for several weeks after, because the experience can last for more than a day or two. I would highly recommend it.
Yeah.
But I would I've had I'd say one of the most important experiences of my whole life was Ibogaine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, so there's a fellow named Leo Zeff who is we called him the secret chief. So he was the leader of the underground psychedelic therapy movement, and he worked closely with Sasha Shulgin. And Sasha Shulgin was the chemist that invented hundreds of psychedelics. He worked for Dow in the 60s, and he invented a biodegradable insecticide. And they rewarded him with his own lab to do whatever he wanted. And so Sasha tried to do more psychedelics, and they're like, well, maybe these are not going to lead to products. So he realized he had to leave, and he set up a lab at home, and he taught. But they would have this process of inventing new drugs, new psychedelic drugs, looking for new therapy drugs. And they would then, Sasha would take it into himself, and then if he thought it was okay, he would give it to his wife, Anne. They're now both, and they would do these together. And then they had a group of 12 people that would meet like once a month, and they would try these new drugs. Sasha, by the way, did go to the Bohemian Grove, where he was a musician there, and so he was able to go, but he would test new drugs with people at Bohemian Grove.
Oh my God. So like presidents and bankers,
different kinds of people like that. Yes, they would try these new things. They'd go for walks in the woods because you go to Bohemian Grove for a week or two, and so it's not like you're there for a day or so. But so this small group of 12 people decided that MDMA had incredible potential. This is in the middle 70s, and they gave this to Leo Zeff, and Leo said, "Wow." He was about to retire. He was a clinical psych PhD. And he was getting up there in years, and he was about to retire. He trained a lot of people with LSD and other things. And so he did not retire in order to bring forth MDMA. And so he really pioneered the use of therapeutic use of MDMA. And this is now MDMA being a therapy drug before it became ecstasy as a party drug. But that attracted Lloyd Benson, the senator from Texas. He heard about this, and then he complained to the DEA. And then the DEA moved to criminalize. We knew that this public use of MDMA was going to eventually result in DEA crackdown. This is Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan and all of that. And so we had a jump start in a sense that the DEA didn't know we were there. They only knew the party drug. They didn't know the therapy parts. But we knew that the DEA was there, and they were coming after us. And so Leo Zeff came to me, and he said, "You're starting to be an advocate, and I'd like to offer you an Ibogaine experience because we need to own our own shadow, own our own weaknesses, own our own things that we're not comfortable with, and also have spiritual connections and things like that." And he said, "If I can help you, this might help in your political work, because then you'll see that we're mixtures of good and bad. Everybody is, and that you won't demonize the DEA, and that you may be able to find a way to, build a bridge. And so he offered me this Ibogaine experience. And I said, great, I would love to do this. And so we had this whole long day to set aside to do this. And Ibogaine in plant form takes a while to take an effect. So Leo said, I'd like to give you a bunch of LSD at the same time. It was 350 micrograms of LSD, which is a pretty hefty dose. The first LSD experience that we know of, Albert Hofmann, April 19th, 1943, was an amount that he thought would have no real effect because it would be so small, 250 micrograms, which is a major existential challenge. So 350 micrograms is pretty good as well. And so I actually got administered Ibogaine, a bunch of it in plant form, and then also the LSD at the same time. And I could tell the differences between the drugs. I could tell coming up on the LSD and moving towards this kind of ego dissolution and opening up and different my emotions and how am I going to do this political work and who am I and am I qualified and all of this. And I sort of had a lot of experience with LSD. I'd never done Ibogaine before, and I was able to open up pretty well for the LSD. But then this sort of low guttural rumble started from the Ibogaine. The LSD peaks around 3 hours or so. And I could feel this Ibogaine building and building and building. LSD is also very much in your head, very ethereal, more so than psilocybin mushrooms, which are more embodied. And so this Ibogaine started coming up, this experience, and I started feeling like if I could just let go, if I could just fully have this experience, and if I didn't have these fears and anxieties, then I would be a better advocate, and that I needed to, and so much was at stake. But then I felt I couldn't let go because I was too scared, and then I would be hating myself. So I felt that there was this cycle of, I'm not as good as I should be. I wish I could let go. I do have these emotions of fear. And then I would feel that and get nauseous, and then I would vomit. And then I would feel relief for like a minute or so. And then the swirl would begin, and each of them is like 15 or 20-minute cycles and stuff. And then I would get to this peak, and then I would vomit again, and over and over and over. And for a Jewish person, the imagery that I had was that I was being crucified on the cross of self-perfectionism, that I didn't want to be human in a way. I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to be more than I was, and that this idea that I was not perfect, that it just was this connection between self-criticism and self-hatred. And I could see that, and it just made me sick, and I wished I could do more, but I couldn't get out of it. And I had like a 12-hour cycle of that, over and over and over. I mean, I was like dry heaving. I had nothing left to throw up anymore. And I just so saw this connection between wanting to be perfect, not wanting to be human, being super self-critical, leading to self-hatred, and shutting myself down. And so at the end of that day, I was so exhausted. I called it transcendence through exhaustion. I just gave up. And I just beat myself up so much. I just gave up. And I had the most blissful night. It was so beautiful. It was like no struggle, completely open, everything. And I realized that what I needed to do was keep the self-criticism, because that is the drive for quality. You need access to the self-critical part of your mind.
Yeah.
But if it's connected to self-hatred, you don't listen as much, because then you're a bad person.
Right.
So I sort of severed the connection between self-criticism and self-hatred. I accepted myself as a flawed human being that had a lot of room to grow, and that I made friends in a way. I made an ally out of the self-critical part of my brain. And it, I think, has helped me to learn and grow, because we're doing things that I've never done before. We're doing things I've never done before, nobody's never done before, bringing this through the FDA, psychedelic psychotherapy. And we've constantly making mistakes. I like to say that I'm just a who just keeps on trying.